Good morning and welcome to the United States Institute of Peace, a public, nonpartisan institution established by the United States Congress to prevent, mitigate, and resolve conflicts around the world. My name is Peter Mandeville, and I'm a Senior Advisor for Religion and Inclusive Societies here at the Institute. Religion has been a part of the Institute's work almost from the moment we opened our doors. The Religion program is the longest running thematic program that the Institute has, and our work is focused on studying, engaging with, and supporting religious actors around the world as they work to prevent and solve conflicts in their respective homelands and countries. For this reason, we are very privileged to welcome today to the Institute a visiting delegation from the All-Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations. Some of them we're welcoming back to the Institute. Some of them I've had the pleasure of meeting on previous travel to Kyiv, and we are just delighted to have them here. I also wanted to acknowledge the presence of a couple of special guests. His Grace, Metropolitan Archbishop Boris Gudziak of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic community is with us today, and we also have Sheikhna El-Mahfouz bin Baya, the Secretary General of the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies. We're also delighted to be partnering on this event with the Eurasia Center of the Atlantic Council, as well as Razom for Ukraine, and we'll be hearing from Ambassador Herbst from the Atlantic Council a little bit later. USIP has been doing work on the intersection of religion and the war in Ukraine for quite some time now. We've been in a kind of research and analytic vein, tracing key developments and dynamics since 2018. We had the pleasure of welcoming to USIP the primate of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Metropolitan Epiphany, in 2019. Last year, we published the inaugural edition of our new series of Religion, Peace, and Conflict Country Profiles focused on Ukraine. And I'm delighted that just last week, we were able to finally publish our full-scale religious landscape map study of Ukraine. It's available for download in the publications section of USIP's website. And certainly, it speaks about Aukro fairly extensively. Through this work, we've come to see the many intersections of religion and the current war. The key role that faith-based organizations, many of them tied to the churches and religious institutions represented here, the crucial role they played in the early weeks and months of the war in terms of providing important and vital humanitarian services and relief. We've seen more negative and destructive sides of the intersection of religion and the war, such as missiles, Russian missiles, and artillery strikes on religious facilities and churches. We've also seen a complex politics and security concerns rise up around the historical ties of one branch of Ukraine's Orthodox Church to Russia. Through all of these complexities, through all of these challenges, Aukro, I think, has been a unique and crucial voice, allowing the religious leaders of Ukraine to speak collectively and in solidarity with each other in support of the Ukrainian cause. I'm now delighted to turn things over to my USIP colleague and former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Masha Yovanovitch.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is really a pleasure to be with our distinguished panelists and also with everybody else in the room. I know many of you are experts in this area. I'm not going to do an introduction because, frankly, we don't have that much time. And so I want to go right to questions. We're going to have about 20 minutes of questions from me. And then there are going to be questions from the audience. So I have two instructions. The audience should be thinking about their questions and getting ready. And we're hoping that we can do at least one round of questions with everybody, perhaps even two. So brevity is close to godliness, I think, in this context. But first, I would like to ask the Metropolitan to lead us in prayer.
Please rise. And at this moment, we remember all those who fall in Ukraine, fighting for freedom of our country and all the world. We keeping in our prayers Ukrainian brave soldiers, peaceful inhabitants who lost their lives, who suffered because of Russian aggressive invasion, who lost their homes, their relatives. We praying for refugees and IDPs. We praying for those who wounded, who suffered because of mental wounds, and we praying indeed for peace, for long-lasting, just peace for Ukraine. We asked God's help for everyone who helps to provide this just, long-lasting peace, who working to create this peace for Ukraine, for Europe, and for entire the world. And I ask to keep one moment in silence in remembrance of all those who lost their lives because of this Russian invasion and aggression. Thank you.
Thank you, Metropolitan. And I'll turn to you first. And I was hoping that maybe you could set the stage for this discussion and tell us the purpose of this trip. Obviously, it's an ecumenical trip, which I think is significant in and of itself, and what you hope to accomplish here in the United States.
First of all, I would like to thank, as always, our very good partner, United States Institute of Peace. As well, we thanks to Foundation Razum, which helped our delegation to be here. On behalf of all our delegation, we thank Atlantic Council, all our partners who made this visit possible, because even to reach United States for those who live in Ukraine is a very hard task. But we are here because many important reasons. First of all, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to the people of United States, government, non-governmental organizations, all those who are supporting Ukraine in this darkest time of our history. We have deepest gratitude to those who understand our sufferers, who share our pain, and who really helps us to achieve as soon as possible the victory of truth in Ukraine. Our goal is to present in person Ukrainian religious freedom, diversity, deep mutual understanding and cooperation, because our Council of Churches and Religious Organizations is a non-governmental institution which created by our own will more than 25 years ago. And we have 15 members, different churches, who represents almost 95% of entire Ukrainian religious community. We have representatives of different Christian denominations, Muslim community and Jewish community, and it is very unique example of not just peaceful coexistence of people who have different faith, different national identity, but deep and fruitful mutual cooperation. And we had, for this more than 25 years, we had a number of meetings, visits abroad, and we know from our experience how it's important to just present ourselves, because just now, in current world, I think it's one of most important examples of peaceful coexistence. And we try to bring this good news from Ukraine, that inside Ukraine we have this cooperation. We really enjoy freedom of religion and belief. We really protect these rights. And last but not least, our goal is to share our experience, because we are eyewitnesses of Russian atrocities, of what's going on in our country. We have deep cooperation with different people from the grassroots level, and we understand what our nation need, and we try to share with our partners here, because only together we are able to prevent very real catastrophe of Third World War. And I think with help, with partnership of all people of goodwill in United States and around the globe, sooner or later, but we will achieve victory for truth in Ukraine and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Metropolitan. Rabbi Blake, I don't know if you want to expand on that in terms of the ecumenical view and relations among religions in Ukraine, and the status of freedom of religion for the Jewish faith, but perhaps also others.
The first thing I would say is that the Council of Churches and Religious Organizations is non-ecumenical. That's the first thing I would say.
All right.
And I think that that's what keeps the peace. And that's an important point. The point is that what brings us together is the fact that we're all representing religious communities, of different faiths, obviously. But when you come around the table, it's not me and my faith against you and your faith, but it's us together as people of faith against the challenges that people of faith have in Ukraine or in the world, in relations to government, relations to everything else. This is what keeps us together. This is the glue that keeps us together. We're a real non-governmental organization. In other words, we didn't start out that way. But in 2003, and especially in 2004, after the Orange Revolution, the Council understood that our power will be by being a non-governmental organization. That's where our power lies, not with being controlled or quasi-governmental, which we were before, but really to have a totally independent organization. And thank God we were successful in doing that, because that's really what gives the success and the power of the Council. So living in Ukraine, by the way, and I'm an American citizen, if anyone can tell from my accent. I'm probably the oldest expat living in Ukraine, but I'm there since 1989. So I witnessed Ukraine going through its, the throes of independence in the beginning of the 90s, the different, I would say, revolutions. Ukraine was a lucky country. They got more than one chance. They got, a chance in 1991, and they got a chance in 2004, and then they got a chance in 2012, and now they have another chance. And what's happening is you're seeing the development of a true democracy. At the beginning, we thought that it's great because everything is good, and there are no wars, and nothing is happening. But the fact is, the difference between the 2004 revolution, 2014 one, was that 2004 no blood was spilled, thank God. Whereas in 2014, when blood is spilled, at least in religion, we know that that's a covenant that will last and stay. In other words, the fact, and I'll be honest with you, that I, as an American citizen living in Ukraine and the head of the Jewish community, the moment I saw the first shot fired at the Maidan, I knew it was over. There was no, in other words, there was no politics and no diplomatic approaches anymore. That's it. It was over. And the approach that we're bringing here, the message that we're bringing here is, first of all, just look at us.
Yeah.
Just look at us. This is a real council of churches and religious organizations, unlike some of our neighbors, right? This is real. Here, people are here because they want to be here, they're representing someone, and we're not being chosen by the government who should be members and who shouldn't be members. We have 18 members here. And these 18 members represent, as you heard, 95% of all of the faithful in Ukraine, no matter what religion. That's something really, really special for this as a non-governmental organization. So that is our first message. Just look at us. We sit, we talk, we have freedom, we make decisions. When laws are passed that affect religious life in Ukraine, our voice is heard. We are able to represent. I can't say we always win, because politics is politics, and Ukraine is obviously it's a political country, and it's not ruled by government, by religion. So I can't say, but at least our voice is heard. We can lobby. We can go meet with the different factions in the parliament. We can put forth our opinions, and all of our opinions and all of our statements are all unanimous. There's no majority ruling in the council, which is something. It says something about the fact that we're able to bring this all together. The message that the Metropolitan spoke about, and I think that's the most important message, is that we represent the people. The Temerty Foundation paid for our tickets. The Razum Foundation is paying for our visit here, etc. And the different foundations are participating. We were not and are not funded by the government, even one penny. So we don't have anything to say, and the government has nothing to say about what we say either. We're here representing the people of Ukraine. We're here representing the people, the millions of people that had to run, that all of these religious organizations here helped them. We're here representing the millions of people that were displaced, the women and children that are being bombed every single day, and they're being killed every day. That's what we're here to represent. We're here to tell the story of the 10%. The 10% is the difference between an NGO spending money and a government spending money. We know that every NGO knows that for every dollar spent by the US government, it will cost 10 cents for an NGO to do the same thing. For a war fought by the United States against the same enemy that Ukraine is fighting would cost more than 10 times as much. Ukraine is representing today and taking the heat for the democratic world. We're there. The only reason Russia is fighting us is because we're a democracy. The same way, excuse me for comparing it, that Hamas is fighting Israel because it's a Jewish state. They're fighting because it's a democracy. And I think that this is very, very important for the American people. Again, I'm an American, I'm a taxpayer, by the way, too. I file taxes. So I understand when the questions go, what's happening to all that money? What's happening to all that money? And Masha, who knows better than you, how many people at the rank of ambassador are in Ukraine today looking where that money is going from the American side? So the question of where the money is going should not be to the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian people, but to the American government. And I'm sure the American government can account for every single penny that's going on and all of the weapons. Everything is being controlled today. It's not the Wild West out there in Ukraine. It's not the CIA smuggling arms in there and nobody knowing who's getting them and envelopes of cash. That's not what we're dealing with today. Again, this is our message. And our message is, again, not to lobby government, but to speak to the people. People of the United States, good people of the United States, understand what's happening. We are being killed every single day. And it's the height of hypocrisy when Putin gets up and criticizes Israel for attacking Gaza and saying that there are civilians there and women and children will be killed, innocent women and children will be killed and left without a roof on their heads. He has been doing that for 9 years every single day. Every single day. For the last 9, almost 10 years, civilians, women and children are being bombed. Their homes are being destroyed. Russia has not conquered any land in Ukraine. They have only destroyed land. And this is our message here. I hope I didn't take too much time, but
you're right on the money.
That's my message, and that's our message here today, to get this message out to the people of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you. It is so important, I think, for all of us to hear your witness of what is happening in Ukraine today, because I think that with all the news going on, people sometimes forget.
Right.
So I did want to turn to Sheikh Tamim to ask you about the Muslim experience in Ukraine under these circumstances, with Crimea still being occupied by the Russians. What is the situation in Crimea, first of all, and secondly, in Ukraine, with so many Crimean Tatars, evacuating themselves to?
First, I want to speak. Thank you, everybody, to come here and to invite us to speak about our Ukrainian community. We like the representative of the Muslim, but we are working all together one power, one front, because Ukraine for us, that's the government or the land who join us all together, and we have the free any possibility which we want to do, we can do in Ukraine. About the situation, I want to tell you that we tried many times to opposite anyone who want to use the religion for their political movement. And when Russia occupied the Crimea and the Donbass, and the Ukrainian people make the Maidan revolution, we find somebody who put in YouTube the Islamic government in Donbass. And we find somebody who can use the Islam or the Muslim community to destroy Ukraine. And we organized the international community for all the representative of the minority nationality in Ukraine. That's about 60 organization. And we control the Islamic movement in Ukraine. This is a question that's very important to keep Ukraine, to defend Ukraine, and don't give anybody to destroy Ukraine like Yugoslavia or Czechoslovakia and others. That's some information about our job. We came here to explain everybody. For the government, that's government. But anyone, you know, we are representative of the majority of the Ukrainian citizen. And we want to speak with the Ukrainian citizen, to American citizen, to understand us. And I want to ask the Muslim community here, who help Ukraine?
Yeah.
Who help Ukraine? We receive, like Muslim community, from Jews, from Christian, and the delegation come to mosque from Europe, from America, but without the Muslim representative. Why? We are part of a Ukrainian community, and we defend our land. And somebody want to use the Islam to kill the others and use this one for their political, like Russia and others. I want to ask everybody, think about the Ukraine like one government, and we have one land, and must help us to save Ukraine, because for us that's an example for many countries in Europe, in America, how we can live all together. I want to ask the Muslim community, you help anybody, but you don't see the Muslim community and the Ukrainian citizen. Why? I don't understand. That's my question.
And have you received an answer to that question? Have you received an answer to that question?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll want
Not
to hear
yet.
what the answer is, because certainly deserves a good answer. Mr. Bruson, Bishop Bruson, I wanted to ask you, I mean, the Protestant, the evangelical community in Ukraine is relatively small, but relatively influential, including, you know, having many ties here in the United States. And I'm wondering, you know, I guess first of all, what your experience, your community's experience has been during the war, but also your important role in the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for supporting Ukraine. And I want to underline that this war is not about our land. This war is about the very existence of our freedom, identity, values, and culture. This is about people, about human life. There is no space for the Ukrainian identity under Russian dominion. So for us, it's very clear, fight or die. And we are here as people of Ukraine. And I'm speaking to you out of Bucha because my apartment is Bucha, which was occupied and looted by the Russians. I am leading a seminary which was hit by 6 missiles by the Russians. We have graduates and pastors and chaplains who were murdered. So please hear our cry. I want to witness that we enjoy religious freedom that we have in Ukraine. Because for 70 years we have been persecuted by the Soviet Union. We know what does it mean not to have this freedom. And now we do have this freedom. And also I want to underline and, you know, draw your attention to the problem of religious freedom on the temporary occupied places. We are not speaking about a lot of churches and buildings taken away. We are speaking about people being murdered just because they have different faith. So, and because I'm in Washington and Martin Luther King is one of my heroes, I like his speech here, I have a dream. But he has another quote. Injustice somewhere is a threat for justice everywhere. There is a significant existential challenge for justice on the occupied lands. So this is our invitation to think about freedom, justice. And I am very proud to see how different religious communities of different faith and traditions, they join hands in order to help fellow Ukrainians. And we do have big plans to rebuild Ukraine. Ukraine have future because we fight not for land, we fight for values. And we hope that people of the United States who love freedom, justice, democracy, and peace will not leave us alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. So I'm going to throw it open to the floor. I think you've heard a lot of interesting comments. We haven't had a chance to really follow up, but this is your chance to follow up. So who wants to be the first person? Representative. Is there a microphone? Yeah. Do you want to bring it over? Could you wait just a second, because I think this is being recorded.
Yeah, Jim Slattery. I'm curious how you all react to the legislation that was under consideration last week in the Rada that was attempting to, some people might say, regulate, control the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. I'm just curious how you all react to that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna speak, because I'm Jewish, so I'll speak about it.
As Orthodox.
And I'm also Orthodox, right?
Yeah, that's great.
I want everyone here to understand the challenge that Ukraine is standing in front of. The question here is not a regulation of religion, and the proof is in the pudding. Because, like I said, I'm living this since 1989. I've seen freedom of religion grow and grow and grow in Ukraine. No question about it that over the last 33 years that Ukraine has been independent, there's been a tremendous, tremendous growth of religious movement, religious life, religious freedom. Indeed, when I would say when this government came into power, they had come right after Ukraine had created and the canonical Church of Ukraine, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and because that was done by the previous president, so politically there was even some leaning, towards what we call the Moscow Patriarchate of Ukrainian Orthodox Church. However, the challenge that Ukraine has is when there's a church that is 101% controlled by a government that is waging war against you. The Orthodox Church in Ukraine, unfortunately, because there are good people everywhere, including in the church there. However, when it has become evident, when Ukraine began this, they began by just arresting individual priests that were found doing things that break the law and spreading and working for Russia within Ukraine. They did begin with that. It didn't come and say, oh, let's get rid of this church. You have to understand that politically, it is not a very smart move to quote unquote regulate a church that millions of people living in Ukraine are members of that church. And there's no way, it's fate. It's not that they're going to be able to say, okay, now move over to the other church. It doesn't work that way. However, at the same time, Ukraine is challenged, there's a war going on. And that war is what we call a hybrid war. And part of the hybridity of that war is that if Russia can work through the churches, they're working through the churches. And I'll give you an example. Like I said, I'm an Orthodox Jew. But in 2005, I personally, in my office in Kiev, was approached by two representatives of the FSB, the Russian Security Services, if I would work for them and help them create a structure whereby they will be able to control the Jewish community in Ukraine and use that structure to disseminate. I'm telling you, this was told to me openly. It's not like it was, they were hiding. They said they'll give me all the money I need, and I'll have all the money that Lazar has in Russia and all the power that he has there. They'll give it to me in Kiev. All I had to do was head an organization and help them create an organization. And what they told me was the reason is because they said they're trying to get Ukraine to unite with Russia on top. It's not working. They're going to try and work through the civil society and organizations on bottom. So I threw them down the stairs, figuratively, and threw them out of my office, but I don't know how many people they went to besides me that they got to do these things. So they'll use any means that they can to get into Ukraine and to try and control and bring their point of view. And as my colleague said, to take away our freedom, because they're fighting against our way of life, which is democracy and freedom. That's what the fight is against. So they'll use the church for that. And in general, the problem is that the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, not only does he bless the soldiers that go out to murder us, not only, he's even collecting money to pay private armies now to go to Ukraine and to kill people. That's basically what's happening, because it's not a war of the Russian army against the Ukrainian army, as we heard. Mm-hmm. This is a war of the Russian army against the Ukrainian people. And not only Ukrainian ethnic people, but even Russian ethnic people, if they want to live democratically, they're the ones that are getting killed. I want to remind everybody that the parts of Ukraine that are now occupied are occupied by ethnic Russians. They're not ethnic Ukrainians. It's part of Ukraine, but most of the people, they were Russian speakers, the ones that Russia said they're coming to save. And what have they done? They're murdering them. They're killing them. They're bombing them. Kherson, that in their so-called constitution is part of Russia, is being bombed every single day by dozens and dozens of bombs. So if the church, again, the structure of the church is very difficult. And believe me, I'm Jewish, okay? I'm going to be open with you and honest with you. I look at this and I say, what's the precedent here? They're controlling a religion, and what happens if somebody else comes up and doesn't like the Jews or the Muslims or somebody else? They're going to start controlling. But it's a very frightening thing. And I've met with members of Ukrainian Security Service about this, about what is the right way and what is the balance that they can do to maintain the peace, to maintain the law, within rule of law. You can't tell somebody, okay, if you're a church, you can break the law, you can work for the enemy. It just doesn't work that way. Even if you're a man of the cloth and if you're a man of faith and you're a religious leader, when you break the law, you have to pay for it. And this is what's happening. And that's why we're looking at it. Of course, obviously, we're all nervous about it, and we're all worried about it, and we're all concerned about it. But at the end of the day, Ukraine has to survive. Ukraine has to thrive as a democracy, and it just will not happen if it's going to be controlled, or if parts of it are going to be controlled from the enemy state while the war is going on.
Thank you.
If I may.
Does anybody else want to add?
If you want, I would like to add something to this beautiful explanation, because I'm sure everything what Rabbi have been told. We must understand that in 1943, Stalin's government create special institution which have title Moscow Patriarchy, church title, and publicly leading by church persons. But since that time, Moscow Patriarchy as a ruling or governing body is totally controlled by Kremlin. It was during the Soviet time and still is during the Putin's dictatorship. Moreover, during the Soviet time was a huge split because of ideology. Church believe in God, Communist Party was a community of atheists. But now Russia officially use religion, every kind of religion. Everybody had opportunity to saw a meeting between Putin and a number of Russian religious leaders in Kremlin. It looked like not a meeting between political representative and religious representative, but it looks like a report of some officials who reported to his highest boss what have been done. And the general problem is that Russian Orthodox Church, or part of Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, is controlled by governmental institutions which bearing religious title, but in reality it's just a part of government of Russia. And what Rabbi told, these public blessings of Russian atrocities, of war crimes, this justification, official justification, it's not something what happened occasionally, that Patriarch during his sermon told something unacceptable. It's a policy. You know, the very concept of Ruski Mir, Russian world, it's an ideology which justified elimination, vanishing of even Ukrainian identity, because those who live in this ideology of Russian world, they think that Ukrainian identity not permitted. And the main goal of this draft law is to protect Ukrainian citizens from instrumentalization of Russian governmental institution, Moscow Patriarchy, or other institutions, because Rabbi told that such attempts to control religious life in Ukraine is not related to only Orthodox Christians, but every kind of religion in Ukraine. And this law is just about protection of from instrumentalization. And we, as the representatives of different communities, we can see that no one religious community in Ukraine, we officially have up to 60 different denominations, small, big, very different. And only one denomination, Moscow Patriarchate, which officially told that they have no ties, no subordination to Moscow Patriarchy. They proclaimed a year ago that they are independent, and only one this denomination told that this draft law is against our interest. But in this draft law, you don't find any specific name of the religion or denomination or confession or religious union. It's just about administrative subordination to Moscow. If they have no ties, no subordination to Moscow, it's not related to them. But if they try to fool Ukrainian society and all people of goodwill around the globe and use their feelings to protect religious rights, religious freedom, use to protect Kremlin power and control over religious life in Russia, in Ukraine, and other countries, I think it must be clear that it's unacceptable. And we think, we as a council, more than half of the year ago, we met with
Head of Parliament.
Speaker of our Parliament of Rada, and we have been asked, does anyone in this room, you representative of all religious denominations, does anybody against the ban on subordination of Ukrainian religious community to Russian centers? No one raised their voice that we are in favor, we try to keep this subordination. Everybody agrees that we are all against, because we, and Bishop Rusin told it, we had huge experience of more than 70 years living under Kremlin control of religious life, and we very good know what it is, and especially we know from experience on occupied territories where no freedom at all, including religious freedom, to no one. If you're not loyal to a Russian government, you have no rights. It's no matter you are Christian, Orthodox, Protestant, Jews, Muslim, or someone else. And I think that this law must be treated as a law which have aimed to protect religious freedom from instrumentalization by Kremlin's dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
for
thank
this
you.
long
This is a really
explanation.
important question. Thanks for asking it, and thank you for the fulsome answers. I don't know if either of you wanted to add anything to that, or
We support everything what has been said.
Okay.
We don't see this war as a threat. We know what does it mean to have no freedom, so we know that smell. So as an evangelical community, we understand that our country must protect itself. And we don't see this law as a threat for religious freedom. And there is a very good dialogue that we have between our communities and with our government. So
it's really impressive. Chief?
The same. On 2015, I think that by initiative of our council, we tried to make contact with the representatives of religion organization in Russia, in Oslo. And we spoke about our situation, about Ukraine, about the friendly relation, but they couldn't decide anything.
Yeah.
They couldn't decide anything. And when occupied now some parts from Kherson and others, they tried directly to open new muftiyat, religion organizations, and named Mala Russia.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the
Little Russia.
situation. They dictate the people to do that. And everybody left Ukraine and go to Turkey, to Germany, to America, like that.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing, Jeff. Another thing that I want to add, that when they went to that meeting in Oslo, So they can all attest to the fact that when at the meeting of the council, when we spoke about going to Oslo to meet with Russian religious leaders, I voted against it. And I told them that they'll all be prepared by the FSB. Every single representative that came from Russia was prepared by the Russian Secret Service for this meeting with the Ukrainian religious leaders. And they weren't prepared by the SBU.
Yeah.
In other words, you talk about a democracy, you know, that where the religion is just free and you do your thing. Over there, everything and everyone is controlled by the government.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, this is the danger over here. And that's really what the law is addressing.
Thank you. So I think we have time for one more question. Natalie, is that you?
Yes, I know the Archbishop wanted to speak, so maybe I'll give him that.
If I can add a Catholic voice to this question, which is raised by many, which is parroted by Tucker Carlson and company, even in the last 24 hours, and which is planted by a genocidal power that has declared that its intent is to eliminate Ukraine as a country, as a culture, as an identity. And it's very important to understand who is talking about this and who's bringing the attention of American government, American institutions, the global community to this question. In Russia, as was said, but I would like to amplify, there is no real religious freedom for anybody, any confession. All confessions are equally, or not equally, but all confessions
Some are more equal than others.
lack religious freedom. My church has probably about 500,000 members in Russia, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, which was the biggest illegal church in the world from 1945, 46 to 1989. Analogy. What is religious freedom? In the United States, we have 200 parishes for 50,000 people that go to church. 200 parishes. In Russia, there's 10 times as many. We have not a single registered legal parish. It's not impossible. It's impossible for Ukrainian Catholics in Russia to have a parish. There are other confessions that are illegal. The Jehovah's Witnesses, illegal. The Catholic Church in Russia is stunted. It's involved in self-censorship. The Orthodox Church is completely controlled, and those dissidents, those priests that said an aggression against Ukraine is immoral, have been defrocked.
Yeah.
In 300 years, every time there's a Russian occupation, the Ukrainian Catholic Church is rendered illegal, starting with Catherine, 19th century, 20th century, 21st century. In the occupied Donbass area, there is not a single Catholic priest that is functioning, Roman Catholic or Eastern Catholic. And all of our confessions understand that a Russian occupation will bring the limitation or elimination of our religious freedom. So for a voice from Russia to question religious freedom exhibited here, where in the world will you see an Orthodox bishop, a Muslim imam, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi sitting together? As you said, look at us.
Yeah.
Look at us. And that is very important for people to see, because the eyes of the world are only discovering Ukraine. And we're very grateful to the Institute of Peace that fosters this discovery, because the issues are not simple.
No.
But the image is very clear. And it's before our eyes today.
Natalka.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to take one more
I'll
question.
ask quickly,
So
and
thank you.
I'm asking of Bishop Bruson. In the United States, the evangelical community is growing rapidly, and it has a unique and interesting allegiance to the Republican Party, often, a particular part of the Republican Party, and yet the evangelical community in the United States often aligns itself with the Russian Orthodox Church for reasons of faith, for reasons of belief. And I find it, and I've worked with Ambassador Herbst on some of this earlier on, that the evangelical community in the United States, which is very important politically, especially today in the US Congress, today when we're looking at whether or not to fund Ukraine going forward for the next year, they need to hear from the Ukrainian evangelical community. They need to hear about the atrocities of the murder and torture of the evangelical pastors in occupied Donbass. They need to hear about the lack of freedom from you, from your community. What more can you and the evangelical community of Ukraine do to help the evangelical community in the United States understand that the Russian Orthodox Church is not today, for all the reasons you've given, is not the example, and that they should not seek to align with it when it has no respect for the evangelical community? What can the evangelical community of Ukraine do to help us here in the United States with that part of our citizenry?
Thank you. This is a very important question, and we do our best making our story known among our fellow evangelical believers. Yes, we see that Russian propaganda is extremely effective. And I don't think that only evangelical community can change the perspective of evangelicals in the United States. This is our common goal. And we, even though I am an evangelical pastor, I want to work on behalf not just my tradition, but all people of Ukraine. This war made every Ukrainian my neighbor. So, and impacting evangelical communities in the United States with true information about atrocities and horror of the war, this is our common thing. And I believe that this meeting is crucial because we can, by our presence here, we can communicate that there is a unity and this is unjust war. And of course we need to have more support and assistance of all people of the United States, not just evangelical, but we see this problem.
Yeah. That's a really important question. Thank you, Natalie. So I think we've had a very rich discussion, which is also a little bit frustrating because I at least have a lot more questions on just the few questions we were able to go through, plus a whole bunch of other ones, and I'm sure that many of you all do as well. So I'd really like to thank our panelists, and I'd like to ask Ambassador Herbst to come up and wrap it up.
We can take questions in email as well.
All right, there you go. You heard it.
Masha, thank you. And thanks to USIP and Razum for putting this together, and the Eurasia Central Atlantic Council is delighted to be part of it. This is a very important event. Putin's war on Ukraine is a war of war crimes. It's a war designed to destroy Ukrainianness, said multiple times by senior Russian officials and Russian media. And when they say that, what they mean is to make sure that Ukrainians in Ukraine, under Russian control, give up their Ukrainian identity, cease to exist as a community of Ukrainians, which is why some scholars of genocide, like Eugene Finkel, call this a war of genocide. This war is a war on religious freedom too. And it's wonderful to have all the major faiths in Ukraine represented on this panel and in the audience to make this clear. It's important because it's part of the, what would you call it? The abomination of this war. It's not simply a war about territory, as some naive realists think. It's important too because Americans believe very strongly in religious freedom. Part of our Constitution, part of our public debate every day. So the testimony we're hearing today from the faith communities in Ukraine of the horrors that they are undergoing in the all Russian-occupied Ukraine is important for Americans to understand. It's important, as my longtime friend Natalie Ureska pointed out, because there is one fraction of one party in the United States which seems to be clueless about American interests in ensuring that Putin's war in Ukraine fails. And one part of the constituency in that fraction is evangelicals. And we know how badly the Kremlin treats evangelicals in Russia and in Russian-occupied Ukraine. And this is a story that needs to be heard here, not just from evangelicals. We should help. It's all in our interest. Then there's something else, which is really important too. And in fact, it has two dimensions. Russian propaganda is a serious phenomenon. And they have successfully plied two themes which work against Ukraine, which work against common morality, and also, by the way, against American interests. Theme number one is Ukraine is full of Nazis. And boy, you got to make sure that those Nazis in Ukraine are defeated. And we all know the peculiarities of this, since Ukraine, at the moment that Russia launched its large invasion, had not just a Jewish president, or a Ukrainian who happens to be Jewish president. Similarly, they had a prime minister who was Jewish, Ukrainian Jewish citizen. And fortunately, not entirely, the pushback against that, the truth told against that, has limited its impact, not entirely. This goes back to a letter that was published in, I forget, it was New York Times. I think Jim Timoney also helped put that together back in 2014, that laid out that this was a false narrative. And having Rabbi Bleich and others in the Ukrainian Jewish community was important to that. I mean, another very important figure in public life in Ukraine is Yosef Zissels, who, of course, spent many years in the Soviet Gulag, because standing up for the rights of Jews to, well, actually, he's kind of secular Jewish, but right of Jews to identify as Jews, to act as Jews, including practice of their religion. So that one is not fully under control, but largely. But the second one, the second main theme, is still metastasizing malignantly. That's a kind of a mouthful. That's the notion of serious repression, religious repression in Ukraine. Rabbi Bleich addressed this when he talked about priests of the Russian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate who are breaking the law by providing sanctuary to Russian agents, maybe providing some information to Russian military, maybe harboring weapons. And of course, beyond that, which is why people are getting arrested in Ukraine, not because they're repressing the Moscow Patriarchate, but there's also the truly non-Christian, non-Orthodox, I say that as an Orthodox Christian, behavior of the MP as they're telling Russian soldiers heading to the front in Ukraine, hey, if you die, all your sins are forgiven. Pardon me, but that reminds me of the notion that the jihadi who gets killed goes to heaven and gets 70 virgins. It's kind of similar, huh? And of course, Patriarch Kirill, who was an agent of the KGB in Soviet times, some habits die hard, is also now funding his own mercenaries to go kill Ukrainians. It would be nice if certain active American media types were to put that on the air when they're trying to slander current Ukraine. Last point. The most famous quote in the, you might say, the history of American foreign policy realism is John Quincy Adams saying, we don't go abroad for monsters to slay. We are the well-wishers of everyone's freedom, but the guarantors only of our own. Now that's a great quote. And people sometimes use that to justify us not providing support to Ukraine. Because those people don't understand that if Putin wins in Ukraine, his next stop is Estonia and Lithuania. But let's put that to the side for the moment, because that's not so relevant to this conversation. It's that other point, the sub-clause, that we are the well-wishers of everyone's freedom. Well, excuse me. When you have so-called American journalists propagating falsehoods about Ukraine, slandering those fighting for freedoms, that is not American. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you to our distinguished panel. And I think we want to give you another round of applause and see